Dear Mr. Chairman, dear Dr. Shetty, Mr. Vice Chairman, Dr. Rohit, dear friends and staff here, dear students, it's a real pleasure for me to be here. And I have to say I'm a little bit overwhelmed. It's probably the first time that I give a speech with this honor. So I have to get accustomed to this a little bit. Yes, I'm overwhelmed by the short visit here. And as you might think, I have visited a lot of clinical places, research places, educational places in ophthalmology all over the world. But I rarely have seen what I've seen here today. The kind of bandwidth that I saw from research, and I will come to the particular part of research that I've seen today here, all the way through the very advanced clinical practice, sophisticated training and education, and all the way to very, in my opinion, I was deeply moved, very important social responsibility, the rehab work for disabled children. So this kind of bandwidth, and I think this is a big compliment to the institution, I've never seen anywhere in the world. And that's why I agree with Ram. This is, I think, is a good partnership. And why is this a good partnership? I really don't want to take too much of your time, but would like to say a few words about the history of Zeiss, because I think that will let you understand why this is a good partnership and why we've come together. Zeiss was founded more than 170 years ago by someone, a mechanic, Carl Zeiss, an engineer, who wanted to start his business, but he understood that he could only be successful in the business of microscopes if he teamed up with customers, with users, with researchers. And actually the reason why Zeiss is what it is today, a €6 billion company, 170 years old, is that from the very early day on, he was only committed to the best performance of his customers. In this old days, these were the researchers of the University of Jena in cell biology, very famous people. Ernst Haeckel is probably also known to you. It's actually interesting that Charles Darwin was writing to Carl Zeiss that he wants for his son only a Zeiss microscope, and we have this letter in our fundus. So he wanted the best, and he wanted to have this microscope delivered. Literally, it says, at any cost. I wish we had more customers like this, but he wrote to Zeiss, deliver it at any cost. So this was in the early days. Zeiss has moved then to a very important stage that the company realized, and the founder realized, he was not a scientist, he was an entrepreneur, he was a mechanic, and he realized that he could only excel with his company and grow with his company if he partnered with a scientist. And that scientist was Ernst Abbe. And the interesting thing about this is this was a congenial partnership, and now you see already the parallels that I noticed here at NN. This congenial partnership between research work, clinical work, which in his case was the work in the company, but also Ernst Abbe, the partner, the scientific partner, was also one of the best teachers in optics, and he is really the founder of modern imaging. So we wouldn't have all these nice imaging devices if it hadn't been for him developing the theory of imaging based on diffraction. So when I am asked today what makes Zeiss special, and I've been working for 27 years with this company, I've been fortunate enough to start in research, and talk a little bit about this in a minute. What has made this company strong, growing, surviving also a difficult history, 2 world wars, was this congenial partnership between science and entrepreneurship, and that is, I think, what I also sensed here today, and that's why I think this is a very, very good fit between the two institutions. I would like to say a few words about the research that I've seen here, and because you mentioned a couple of the new directions, I have been very fortunate enough to be part of the early days of the OCT and the femtosecond lasers, and can probably imagine that it is rewarding to see that after 20-something years, these technologies have become almost workhorses in an ophthalmic environment. And that's why I think it was very appropriate what Dr. Rohit said. Now we are, and that's almost in every decade, at a stage where you have to think about what's next and what's coming. Because what today seems to be like 20, and I will tell you a little story, what seemed 25 years ago a kind of a vision that is impossible to achieve has become a reality today. I graduated in femtosecond lasers, and I made a bet with my professor at the university, because at that point of time, femtosecond lasers covered an entire lab room. They were 3 by 6 meters and required about half a day to align and calibrate. And I said, this is a very nice research tool, but it's not going to make it into practice. Obviously, I was dead wrong, and as you can see, you can be dead wrong and can still become a CEO. Now, the interesting thing is research has advanced considerably, and it can only advance if you partner. If you partner with customers, with clinicians from it who have a daily practice, and who also teach. We had on the floor, I said, you never understand anything unless you teach it to somebody else. And again, this is this great foundation, this great combination that I found here. Let me respond, and I didn't know what you were saying. Let me respond a little bit to your very nice presentation about the future of ophthalmology. I had the privilege, it was just 2 weeks ago, at the World Congress of Biomedical Engineers to give the keynote, and I talked about the challenges and the opportunities of medical technology in the next decade, so on from 2020 to 2030. And I mentioned 6 trends that I see very relevant for ophthalmology. Photonics, further miniature, which is clear, optical company. Photonics will further new sources, light sources, and all trends of photonics will influence ophthalmology. We will see more miniaturization so that ophthalmic devices can be very important for India, can be placed all over the country. We will see an abundance of sensors and data. We will see a widespread use of artificial intelligence. So all trends. And we will also see some in surgery elements of robotics or semi-robotics in the OR, I'm convinced. So I named 6 trends. What I missed, and I'm very open, what I missed and what I saw here is a marriage. You said it's a combination of life science and, I'll call it, let's say, biochemistry. A marriage, I use your words, a marriage of life science and medtech devices. That's really something I missed in my presentation, and with your permission, I will include it in the next. But I think this is very important point. It is another set of, another direction of the technology where I'm now, after what I've seen also today, I'm 100% convinced that this will happen. Closing, I would like to say, our experience, and we published also an article about this at Zeiss, our experience is that it takes typically between 15 and 20 years, so for the young students here in the room to understand at what stage they are, it takes 15, maximum 20 years from a technology conceived in a research lab to full market acceptance. We have the OCT is a very good example. It took about 5 years from a patent to a lab prototype. It took another 5 years to a successful clinical approval. It took another 5 years to make it a workhorse. And now we are talking polarization sensitive OCT, which I learned today, also taking it to new fields. I'm pretty sure this will shorten. So what you experience in new technology as today as in the research lab in 10, 15 years will become standard in the practice. That's how fast things are developing, and I completely agree with you. We have to be courageous enough to say that's going to happen, and then we have to work towards it. And that's really, and that brings me to a close, this is really the core of Zeiss. Zeiss has as a claim for its brand, a tagline, if you like, for its brand, seeing beyond. And I think that's exactly what you said, what you're trying to do at NN here, seeing beyond, and that's exactly why we're a good partner, why I'm very grateful for this partnership, very thankful for this partnership, and I can ensure that I will do everything that this partnership can thrive and develop. Thanks again for the warm welcome and all the best.